Hey folks, Baxel here. We're going to continue on with our dry run series of educational Deadlock content today. Today's video is about who to play. Deadlock has a wide variety of playstyles, and because many heroes can be built or played in different ways, classifying them is a bit tricky. That's why the key takeaway today is don't hyper focus on every possible playstyle for each hero. We just want to try and narrow things down a little bit. So, for one, I'm sorry if I don't describe the hero how you think about them. They are strong in many off meta playstyles right now. But talking about every single hero in that greater depth feels a little bit out of the scope of this video. To take this video as a starting point, your decisions on who to play and how to play them will be informed over time as you've gained more experience in the game. This is more just a general discussion of sort of what the core identity of that hero's kit seems to be and what Valve seems to want the directions for their heroes to look like. So you may as well use that as the best starting point for how to play and who to pick up as part of your main roster. For example, like Mirage can be built as a hyper carry by design. He excels at long fights. He struggles with mid game farming a bit, which is why I would classify him as an off carry. But he shines at things like split pushing even to the super late game, which again feels like an off carry role whereby you're not necessarily always there for every fight, or maybe you're there for the more mid game fights where a hyper carry may still be trying to farm. Um, but like I say, you can play him either way realistically, especially in pub matches. In scrims, less so. They have much more defined roles in terms of what is the most optimal way to play each hero. But again, out of the scope of this video. Quick shout out to Randomonium. Their videos on finding your ideal League of Legends champion helped me a lot when I was learning League, and I've borrowed some of those ideas to help frame this video for Deadlock. Currently, our hero select screen doesn't help much. It's alphabetical, and the descriptors are all over the place. It's things like duelist or isolator on Wraith make a lot of sense, but others like gooey, arrogant, bullheaded, these things not so much. So we'll make our own categories, and for me, this is how I would like to view the categories. It's not perfect, but it does give us a good starting point. So that's DPS, skirmisher, initiator, utility, and specialist. The DPS heroes, their core identity is about constant damage. When played well, they survive to the end of the fights and clean up. They need loads of souls generally, and they scale into the late game far better than anybody else in the lobby. And they usually avoid fighting until they hit certain power spikes. Oftentimes, these power spikes are quite late into the game. Skirmishers, they're similar, but they're more kit driven. So instead of relying on items, they thrive on cooldowns, combos, and mobility. Think Calico diving in, dealing damage, evading, and re engaging once their cooldowns are back up. They spike much earlier than pure carries do with their souls, so they oftentimes start fighting a lot sooner. Initiators, so these are heroes that fight both in the neutral state or punish aggression. What I mean by this is they often have some form of hard CC. So, for example, a Lash's ultimate can pick up and grab the entire enemy team, whether this is an aggressive play where you're pushing the enemy back and you want to pull them out of their cover, or a defensive play when you're sort of reacting to the enemy doing the same to you. And then you've also got heroes like Holiday, who have a single target CC that completely displaces an enemy. Both I would classify as some form of initiation, and that seems to be the core identity of their role. They do function in very different ways. Utility, this is your supports heroes to help allies and weaken enemies, both through debuffs and buffs and other tools. Not really much more needs to be said on them right now. And for specialists, they're outliers. Either their role can't be replicated by others, or they flex across so many categories, it's hard to give them one primary and call the others subcategories. We'll make a point of going over each and every one of these and why I'd consider them a specialist. Side note on this, I think it's down to your own judgment if you want to include a specialist in your hero roster. It's something that you have to decide, as sometimes they take a lot more time than other heroes to learn, and with their unique playstyle, it can oftentimes not be translated very well into other heroes. So definitely worth picking up if you like the idea of the hero, but just bear that in mind. Personally, I think learning a handful of heroes within one of these roles, excluding specialist, is the best path to improving. Each class plays very differently, and the overwhelming nature of MOBAs can put players off fast. Constantly switching between heroes makes it worse, even for veterans with 1,000+ hours. Sticking to a role smooths out that learning curve massively and avoids a lot of frustration. Now, just before we go into talking about specific heroes for examples, just wanted to highlight that I do think you can further classify these roles. What I mean by this is, for example, like we touched on previously, so carry and off carry being the same thing identity wise, but often having subtly different roles. For example, skirmishers, I think, for example, Grey Talon will never spec into resilience. They will just be somebody who's aiming to cast a lot of spells and do damage from afar, which is still a skirmishing sort of playstyle whereby you're involved in these fights in the mid game. But then they've got like bruisers like Billy, who their items are completely different and the way they approach a fight is completely different, even though they try to achieve very similar things, which is gaining a lead through small skirmishes around the map in the mid game. And then you've got initiators. A team fight isn't really a great classification. I really struggled with this one. I feel like the best way to describe a team fight initiator is kind of as a subclass. It's something that a lot of heroes can do and a lot of heroes can specialize in, but it is definitely worth of note, and it feels like the appropriate counterpart to a pick hero, i.e., a holiday, a paradox, etc. So that's why I've put pick initiator as a subclass as well. And then for utility, again, this one's kind of awkward because a lot of heroes do a bit of both, but you've got enchanters, people who buff allies, and debuffs, people who debuff the enemies. And then, of course, like we touched on, specialists we'll get onto in a second. So now let's get into the specifics. I'll cover a few examples so you understand the complete list I've linked in the description and how I approach building your own roster. Each hero has a main class and in some cases subclasses that reflect their alternate builds or situational strengths. Think of subclasses as context, not hard rules. For example, Abrams, 100% a bruiser no matter how you build him, gun, spirit, melee or tank, he plays the same core role. Thanks to his AoE ultimate stun and his charge, I also tag him with a pick subclass since he can generate fights for his team by initiation in the sense of making picks. Bebop. He can be built gun, an ult-centric team fighting bebop has seemed to be prevalent in the current meta, or bomb stacking, which is a very, very popular off-meta build and always has been and always will be. His main identity, though, is all set up through his hooks. I'm really confident just calling him a pick hero and leaving a few subclasses to highlight the versatility of the hero and different ways that you can choose to specialize him given any given meta. Warden, probably the weakest placement on the list. I've put him down as team fight for his primary role. I classify him as team fight because his ultimate defines his playstyle. He's often built as off carry, for example, and oftentimes when his gun is strong, built as a full gun carry. But to me, Warden feels most aligned with his hero design when he's leaping into a fight using Majestic Leap, popping his ulti and shredding teams whilst his allies rally behind him. Now for the specialists, we've got Doorman, high skill ceiling, highly adaptable. His kit lets him group enemies, stun them into walls, throw out burst damage, debuffs with his bells, sets up pick plays using his ult. No matter how you build him, he's always going to do these sorts of things, but he will absolutely become a spellcaster if you want to stack on lots and lots of cooldown reduction, and maybe even things like Echo Shard on his cart to help him have lots more consistent CC throughout the game. But the general rule is he's too flexible to be put into a box, in my opinion. He's a very unique case. And this is the exact same for Sinclair. He's very unique. He's got a complex kit that's hard to master, just like Doorman, and he's got many diverse builds. Plus, his ultimate lets him steal all 6 enemy ults. Enough said. McGuinnis can literally play every role. Less mechanically demanding than Doorman or Sinclair, sure, but her versatility in her kit justifies the specialist label to me. Viscous can also cover every role, though usually a couple of builds rise to the top in any given meta. His unique world interacting abilities, his 2, 3, and 4, really do set him apart and make his playstyle truly unique, so that's why he's a specialist. So that's everything for today, to be honest. I've not really gone into the minutiae of every role and how I would define them and what's best for each player to pick. Like I said, I think you should try and build a roster based on one of these ideal classes. So whether it be a case of we take Drifter, for example, he's predominantly an off carry, He likes to snowball his lead and scamish in the mid game and be a massive threat in the late game. That's kind of how he works. Now, he may not be similar to any of the other off carries, but looking at the subclasses of Spellcaster and Bruiser, we can see that he does have that mindset of in the mid game, he wants to make things happen, he wants kills to happen, he wants to be playing for objectives. So, with that logic, maybe something like a Shiv or a Victor or a Billy might be best for you. Victor is an off one where he does need a lot of farm to succeed in the current meta. We don't know if that's going to change, but right now that's part of his hero design. So that would be his subclass is quite heavily weighted, whereas others, for example, like Abrams, where his pick classification it's still weighted, but it may not be to the same degree. So just take it with a pinch of salt. This is an idea for how to explore different heroes and how to think of building a roster, not necessarily some hard and fast rules to live by. Thanks for watching, folks, and have a good day.